welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here, it's pretty sharp and clear.
Yeah.
You bring us the tangled mess, the complexity, and we delivered the distilled clarity.
That's the goal.
And today, we are wrestling with a really dense stack. I mean, legal documents, internal testimonies from an organization, explosive YouTube commentary. We're pulling out those core nuggets you need.
And this one is particularly complex and sensitive. It revolves around Nikolas, the founder of Eat Predators, and it sits right at this messy intersection of survivor advocacy, online claims, counterclaims, misinformation, legal battles.
The source material itself lays out this three-way entanglement. You've got Nikolas, or AN, filing this defamation lawsuit against journalist Cat Tenbarge, CT.
Right.
And then that whole dispute gets massively amplified by the online presence of content creator Adam McIntyre, AM.
Exactly. And our mission today, just to be clear, isn't about deciding who's right or wrong here. It's about impartially mapping this out for you.
Laying out the landscape?
Precise. Charting the competing claims from AN, CT, AM, but also critically giving real weight to these internal accounts, challenge the leadership in his own organization, Eat Predators, or...
Yeah, it's crucial because while the lawsuit is the sort of official legal starting point, the sources just explode outwards from there. Years of public suits, questions about the integrity, the management of a survivor movement. The stakes feel incredibly high.
They really are. Not just legally, but in terms of public trust, community trust. And interestingly, that core conflict, the lawsuit itself, is already facing its own, let's say, existential crisis right from the start.
Okay, let's unpack that then. Let's start right there at the legal heart, the case of Nikolas versus Tenbarge, and these surprising hurdles that hit immediately.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out from the legal filings, this is around September 2025, is that this, potentially high-profile suit slams right into judicial scrutiny. Not on the merits, but on a really technical point, subject matter jurisdiction.
Okay. Jurisdiction. Sounds very legalistic. For listeners, what does that actually mean? What was the judge skeptical about?
It means the judge basically wasn't convinced the case even belonged in federal court. So the court issued what's called an order to show cause.
Which is like a prove-it order.
Exactly. It's the judge telling AN's legal team, show me why this federal court has the authority to hear this case, convince me, or I'm dismissing it.
Wow. Okay, so what did they need to prove to keep it in federal court? What were the magic ingredients?
They needed to satisfy the rules for something called diversity jurisdiction, and that needs two things. First, complete diversity of citizen. Simple term. No plaintiff can be legally based in the same state as any.
Okay, different states.
Right. And second, the amount in controversy, what they're suing for, has to be over $75,000. For defamation, if the claims are serious, that money part is usually not the hurdle.
So it wasn't the money, it was the location, the state. What did Anne actually state in her filing that wasn't good enough?
She stated her residency. She said she resided in California, and Cat Tenbarge resided in New York.
Seems straightforward.
You'd think. But the court immediately flagged it. They said stating residency is insufficient to establish domicile.
Okay, hang on. Residency versus domicile. Why is that tiny distinction so critical here? What's the difference?
It's a classic legal technicality, but it's huge in federal court. Residency is just where you live right now. You could be renting short term. Domicile, though, that's your permanent home, the place you intend to return to, where your legal ties really are. Think taxes, voting.
Got it, like your home base.
Precisely. And federal courts need proof of domicile to confirm citizenship for this diversity. If AN and CT, despite living apart, were technically domiciled in the same state, maybe both legally tied to California, then diversity is broken. No federal case.
Wow, so that puts enormous pressure on just proving where people legally live rather than arguing the defamation itself.
Totally. It's a massive procedural hurdle right at the start. The judge gave AN a deadline, Monday, September 22nd, 2025, to fix the filing, to provide proper proof of domicile, or the case would be dismissed. Not on the merits, mind you, but without prejudice, meaning she could potentially refile later, maybe in state court. But still, the whole high-profile federal case could just evaporate because of paperwork. It sets a really tense state.
Okay. So assuming they do manage to fix that domicile issue, let's get to the meat of it. What's the actual defamation AN accused CT of?
The core allegation is that CT defamed AN with malicious intent, that she spread complete misinformation maliciously and deliberately.
Where did this allegedly happen?
According to the filing, it was primarily in the Eat Predators daily live chat. So within AN's community and also publicly on, Twitter.
And the key damaging claim?
The absolute center of it was CT, who the filings identify as a journalist formerly at MSNBC, allegedly claiming AN posted sealed documents related to the Drake Bell case. And even worse, that she doxed a victim involved in that case.
Okay, those are incredibly serious accusations, especially for someone running a survivor advocacy group. What was AN's immediate counter-argument?
Her defense was blunt. These weren't sealed documents at all. They were public redacted records obtained directly from the Cleveland Police Department through official channels.
And she claimed she could prove this.
Yes. She stated she actually provided CT with hundreds of documents and specifically told her how to access the public link to these records online herself. Her argument was essentially, I gave you the proof beforehand, so you knew or should have known your sources were, her words, fucking liars, and that any article based on that claim would be inherently defamatory.
Which brings us to this unpublished NBC article. CT was apparently working on a big piece about AN, but it never saw the light of day. Why not? The sources seem to disagree sharply on this.
Oh yeah, classic he said, she said, and both narratives feed into the broader context. On one side, you have Adam McIntyre and other sources claiming CT was told by NBC editors to drop because, allegedly, Anne simply wasn't relevant enough to justify a major network invest. Kind of a dismissal.
Okay, and AN's version of why the article died.
Completely different. She absolutely disputes the relevance argument. She claims the article was spiked precisely because she provided that mountain of evidence, the police records, the communications proving CT sources were unreliable, and the resulting article would be legally dangerous, defamatory.
So for AN, the article not running wasn't a sign of irrelevance. It was proof she had successfully defended herself against false reporting before it got published.
Exactly. She framed it as vindication.
Now, let's bring Adam McIntyre back in. The lawsuit is against Cat Tenbarge, the journal. But AM, the content creator, features heavily in the complaint itself. How significant is his role, according to AN?
He's absolutely central to her narrative of harm. The complaint mentions him, 31 times?
Wow.
AN's legal filing alleges that AM was essentially, quote, deployed by Cat Tenbarge to attack Alexa. That's the framing.
Deployed, like weaponized.
Yeah, that's the implication. The filing claims AM took CT's specific alleged defamatory claim, the sealed document, the Doxing Act, and repeated them, amplified them, blasted them out to his huge audience, hundreds of thousands of followers.
So AN sees him not just as some random online critic, but as an active participant in the alleged defamation, like the one who actually spread the damage widely.
Exact. In AN's view, the alleged lie might have originated with the journalist, CT, but the real measurable damage to her reputation, the public humiliation, the bullying, as she put it, came from AM's massive platform. That's why he's such a focus, even though he wasn't the one initially sued.
Okay, so to really get the heat behind this defamation claim, you have to look closer at this sealed versus public fight over the documents. This wasn't just like a minor disagreement over facts. It was about whether AN had committed an actual crime.
Right. Detail that legal risk again. What exactly was CT's claim implying? CT allegedly claimed AN leaked sealed documents from the Drake Bell victims case. Now, under Ohio law, where that case happened, leaking sealed court or police information be a misdemeanor, a crime.
Which, if true, would obviously destroy her credibility as a survivor advocate, besides the legal trouble.
Completely. It would fundamentally undermine her entire platform. So the stakes on this point were...
So how did AN try to definitively prove she hadn't committed this crime? What was her counter?
Her strategy was pretty bold. Transparency. She publicly posted a direct link to the records in question on the official City of Cleveland website.
Like, here they are, see for yourself.
Exactly. The argument was, look, they're publicly accessible. Anyone can find them here. Therefore, they are public redacted records, not sealed. And crucially, she kept emphasizing that she had given CT this exact information, this exact link, before CT allegedly spread the sealed documents claim.
Suggesting CT either ignored the evidence or deliberately misrepresented it.
That was AN's implication, yeah. It shifts the argument from maybe sloppy journalism to potentially malicious reporting, but then the whole conflict takes this incredibly dark and shocking turn.
The stalker connection.
Yeah. This allegation leveled by AN against CT is maybe the most explosive and damaging in the whole saga.
Okay, lay it out. What does AN claim CT did?
AN claims that while Cat Tenbarge was researching and reporting this story about her, CT communicated directly with a person who had a legal restraining order against them, preventing any contact with AN.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I heard that right. A professional journalist working for a major network outlet is talking to the restrained stalker of the person she's writing about.
That is the allegation, yes.
Why? I mean, what possible justification could there be? And how did AN even find out about this?
The sources suggest the motive might have been, digging for dirt, trying to gather negative information about AN, perhaps find conflicting stories, undermine her credibility somehow by talking to someone known to be hostile towards her.
Okay, that's questionable judgment already, but how is it exposed?
This is the really staggering part. AN claims that the stalker later used Cat Tenbarge's own email correspondence in a legal attempt to terminate AN's restraining order.
No, seriously.
Yes. According to AN, these emails contain CT's specific questions to AN about the case, including questions that apparently touched on the restraining order itself, questioning its validity, perhaps. The stalker allegedly presented these emails from the journalist as evidence against AN in court.
So the journalist's own research, her quests, were allegedly turned into ammunition by the stalker to attack the victim's legal protection.
That's precisely the allegation. AN framed it as CT emboldening and facilitating the violation of the restraining order. She argued that by discussing AN, the protected party, and questioning the order with the restrained party, CT wasn't just gathering information, she was actively helping the stalker undermine AN's safety and the court's protection.
That moves things into a whole different category. It raises profound questions about journalistic ethic, judgment, duty of care.
Absolutely. And the sources aligned with AN were quick to point out the, let's say, intense irony when compared to CT's own past public statements about online content.
Oh, what had CT said previously?
Well, sources dug up posts where CT herself had defined spreading misinformation that hurts someone's reputation as lunacy. She'd stated very clearly online that lying about people online can impact their jobs. And maybe most pointedly, she'd apparently discussed victim blaming, defining it as when antagonists try to frame someone correcting a false narrative about themselves as just looking bad, like, oh, it's a bad look to defend yourself.
So Anna and her supporters are basically using CT's own words against her, saying she acted hypocritically based on her own stated principles about online lies, reputation, and victim blaming.
Exactly. They weaponized her prior stance on ethics, condemn her alleged act in this specific case, especially given the extreme sensitivity around a restraining order and the potential danger involved.
Okay, let's step back from the direct AN versus CT legal stuff for a minute and look at the wider public feud, particularly between Nikolas and Adam McIntyre. This really exploded into its own sort of parallel drama, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It became a major online spectacle. AN didn't hold back in her public attacks on AM. She labeled him a fucking bully, called him the YouTube version of TMZ.
Pretty harsh.
And she made this really specific, inflammatory claim that he had actually twerked in front of her while she was visibly upset, crying about her stalker situation, painting him as incredibly callous.
Wow. Okay, so how did Adam McIntyre respond to these personal attacks? Did he defend his behavior or did he take a different approach?
His main counter-strategy seemed less focused on defending the twerking allegation, which he likely denied, and more on trying to pick apart the legal foundation of AN's lawsuit, where he featured so heavily. He zeroed in on finding what he called an official lie within the sworn legal.
An official lie, meaning a factual inaccuracy in the legal document.
Exactly, and he found one, or claimed he did, related to this infamous alcohol. AN's complaint stated that AM was 16 years old when he was involved in an incident in a hotel room involving alcohol with Cat Tenbarge.
Okay, and what was AM's correct?
He went public immediately, stating, no, I wasn't 16, I was 18 or possibly 19 at the time.
Which is still underage for drinking in the U.S.
Right. But AM's argument wasn't really about the drinking itself, it was about the accuracy of the legal file. He argued this factual error, even if seemingly minor, proved AN was willing to lie or misrepresent facts under oath in a legal document just to make him look worse. He framed it as undermining the entire complaint's credibility.
How did AN respond to that correction?
She conceded it was an honest mistake about the specific age, 16 versus 18 or 19, but she immediately pivoted back, pointing out, okay, mistake on the number, but you were still underage for drinking, which is the relevant point about responsibility. And that specific hotel incident itself became a huge talking point, didn't it? Particularly shining a negative light on Cat Tenbarge.
Yeah, let's unpack that incident more. What were the initial claims about what happened?
So, video evidence emerged. It showed Adam McIntyre, clearly under 21, drinking vodka and Red Bull in a hotel. Cat Tenbarge was present, apparently around 2021, before a Free Britney rally they both attended.
Okay.
Since AM was underage, AN and others immediately pointed the finger at CT, the adult journalist in the room. They suggested she was being an irresponsible friend, that she must have facilitated the underage drinking, maybe signed for room service alcohol, something like that. And they publicly accused CT of turning this child into an alcoholic. The optics were frankly terrible for CT.
But then the story got more complicated. Someone else was brought into it.
Yes, quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Adam McIntyre eventually clarified the situation. He stated that the person who actually enabled the drinking wasn't Cat Tenbarge, it was someone named Sloan Hooks.
And who is Sloan Hooks in this context?
According to AM and others, Sloan Hooks was considered at the time to be Nikolas's good friend. AM stated that Hooks provided him with a fake ID, how he got alcohol and access to after parties.
So the alcohol access came via AN's associate, not CT directly.
According to AM's clarification, yes. And apparently this detail, Hooks providing the fake ID, wasn't widely known initially, even among AM's own circle, who had also assumed CT was the facilitator. So this revelation definitely complicated AM's specific attack on CT's irresponsibility regarding that.
Right. Now, this whole messy feud also saw Alexa and Nikolas form a pretty controversial alliance, teaming up with Ethan Klein from the H3 podcast.
Yeah.
Why did that partnership attract so much criticism, particularly aimed at AN?
Well, the way AN and Ethan Klein framed it was as a kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation. They emphasized that both of them felt targeted by Cat Tenbarge and Adam McIntyre, that they were victims of similar alleged misinformation camps. So teaming up made sense from that.
But critics saw differently.
Very differently. They immediately jumped on what they saw as profound hypocrisy. Here was AN, a prominent survivor publicly aligning herself with Ethan Klein. And Klein has this well-known controversial history involving a 15-year-old online account he once operated called Pettit. Klein maintains it was parody, but the name itself is obviously deeply problematic.
So the criticism was, how can you claim to lead a survivor movement and fight toxicity while partnering with someone with that specific history?
That was the core of it, yeah. How did AN defend this alliance?
Her defense rested on the idea of change and focusing on the present. She argued that people can evolve over 15 years, and she was judging Ethan Klein based on his current actions, his support for her cause now. She basically dismissed the focus on the old Pettit account as a deliberate distraction orchestrated by her opponents to take attention away from the alleged current wrongdoing of AN.
So she was asking critics to prioritize present actions over past content.
Essentially, yes. But her critics felt this standard allowing for change and dismissing past issues was something she applied very selectively, particularly when compared to her stances on others.
Okay, now we need to pivot entirely. We move away from the external legal drama, the online feuds, and we dive into the sources that detail what was allegedly happening inside the Eat Predators organization itself. And these accounts, mostly from former members and critics, they paint a really troubling picture.
Let's start with the basic setup, the structure. What were the concerns raised about EP's financial model? How did the community actually work?
Well, EP was marketed as the space for survivors to connect, share experiences, support each other. But sources revealed a key members allegedly had to pay to be in the main survivor group. It was reportedly a $5 a month subscription fee.
Pay to be part of a survivor support group.
That's what was alleged, yes. And critics immediately jumped on that, calling it exploited. They framed it as monetizing trauma, putting essential peer support behind a paywall.
Beyond the money, what was the atmosphere like inside, according to these ex-members?
One key ex-member, identified in the sources as, described the community as fundamentally unorganized. Worse, M claimed it actively put people into flight, fight, or fright mode. The allegation was that Anna herself created fear within her movement, fostering anxiety rather than the safety survivors.
And the sources provide specific examples of leadership failures, right? Particularly during moments of crisis. Tell us about the reported medical emergency during a voice chat.
Yeah, this account is particularly stark. It allegedly happened in late December 2023. They were having a voice chat, a book club meeting. During the chat, one member apparently suffered a serious medical event. They started losing their ability to speak, had a severe headache, clear signs something was wrong.
Okay, a scary situation. How did Ann allegedly respond?
According to the sources, after the initial alarm, Annan allegedly asked out loud to the group, "Oh, wait, doesn't that happen all the time?" Then she asked someone else to check on the member privately.
Doesn't that happen all the time? Seriously. And what happened after the member experiencing the issue left the chat?
Once it was confirmed the member needed help and had left, Annan allegedly just proceeded with the book club discussion right away. The ex-members recounting this felt it showed a shocking lack of empathy, a complete failure to read the room, prioritizing the scheduled activity over a member's genuine medical distress. It suggested to them a real detachment. And this alleged lack of concern extended to basic safety protocols during group interactions too.
Yeah, particularly around moderation in these potentially intense group video chats. How are those concerns handled?
There was one specific incident mentioned where a group video chat apparently got very serious, the way people were speaking became aggressive, and it was triggering a lot of the members who were obviously vulnerable. People started leaving the chat because it felt unsafe.
So members raised concern, asked for better moderation.
Yeah. They specifically asked AN to implement voice moderators, people who could step in and manage the conversation flow, ensure safety. According to the sources, initially downplayed the severity of what happened, sort of dismissed their...
But she did eventually appoint moderators.
She did, eventually choosing 3 members, described as second-generation members, to take on moderation. But the fact that she allegedly resisted at first and didn't seem to grasp the seriousness of the triggering further eroded trust in her leadership on safety.
The sources also describe incidents where trauma sharing itself became inappropriate, crossing lines and making people uncomfortable.
Yes, and this is another really disturbing account. In one alleged group chat, a member apparently started sharing extremely dark graphic. Sources mention things involving Nazi people in their family and mindful, really intense, potentially triggering.
And how did NEN handle that as the leader of the group?
According to the account, even when other members tried to gently steer the conversation away, change the subject because it was becoming too much, NNN allegedly allowed the person to continue sharing the disturbing details for it got so bad that an expert speaker who was part of the group reportedly had to leave the chat entirely, stating they just can't because it was so inappropriate and triggering.
So, a failure to maintain safe boundaries, even in conversation. Now, beyond the atmosphere, their sources also allege concrete examples of mismanagement and broken promise, things that directly affected.
Yes, these failures seem to really damage trust. Take the ex-member M, the author. M had published a true crime memoir based on their experience. They were explicitly promised by AN that the book would be promoted on AN's podcast.
Okay, that's a significant offer.
Huge. And apparently asked for the digital copy, the link, expressed excitement, but M alleges AN just never followed through, never promoted it, never even bought the book. M said AN brought it up again weeks later, only to drop. It felt to M like AN was interested in their trauma story for potential content, but offered no real support in return.
Then there was the canceled protest in New York. That sounds like a major organizational fumble.
A huge one, and very public internally. ANN and her husband apparently hyped up this protest they were organizing in New York City. It was against a band with a member accused of being a predator. They talked about flying out, showed plans, really built anticipation among members.
So people were expecting them to lead this protest.
Absolutely. But on the actual day of the planned event, one dedicated member traveled to the location in NYC ready to protest. They found nothing. No AN, no husband, no organized protest. AN's husband then apparently told the member via Discord that they couldn't make it because they couldn't afford the flight. Just canceled last minute after all the hype.
Wow. And how do they try to handle the fact they'd abandoned this member and the event?
This is where it looks really bad, according to the source. The husband allegedly asked the member who did show up to send a photo of themselves there so they could post it on.
To make it look like the protest happened and they were involved.
Yeah. That's how critics interpret it. Taking credit for an event they did, disrespecting the member who made the effort, and prioritizing their online image.
Okay, and finally, let's look at this Spot Me. This was a fundraiser for a member's surgery. What went wrong there?
Right. A fund was set up to help an EP member pay for needed surgery and promoted it, which was good. But the problem, according to critics, was the management. The actual account, the handling of the money, was allegedly delegated to a group of 20-some-year-old community.
Not exactly professional fund.
No. There were immediate concerns about oversight, accountability for these donations meant for someone's critical medical care. Who was tracked? Where was the transparency?
But then there was a deeper ethical issue alleged regarding NN demanding proof.
Yes, this is where it crosses a serious line, according to the allegation. At some point, N allegedly demanded to see the survivor's medical records before she would agree to promote the fundraiser.
Their private medical records.
Yeah. Critics immediately flagged this as a massive ethical breach, calling it a potential HIPAA violation. Now, whether it technically violated HIPAA law itself is complex, as HIPAA mainly applies to healthcare providers and insurers. But demanding sensitive, protected health information from a vulnerable survivor as a condition for continuing fundraising, it demonstrated, critics argued, a staggering lack of boundaries, professionalism, and basic respect for privacy. Shattered trust.
When you put all these internal accounts together, the fear, the lack of empathy, the broken promises, the boundary violations, it paints a picture of pervasive fear, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe the most chilling piece of evidence for that fear comes from a private message accident. It was from a main moderator, someone supposedly close friends with Anne for 2 years.
What did the message say?
It said, "My mental health is so fucking bad, man. This isn't helping. I'm deathly terrified of Alexa."
Terrified of Alexa.
Yeah.
From a moderator, a friend?
Exactly. This leak led sources and critics to conclude that AN, despite founding a survivor group, was operating as a kind of social predator within it. And that fear lingers. Sources claim former members are still nervous to speak up in fear of what she would lie or post about them. It suggests the very space meant for healing had become, for some, a source of further trauma and intimidation.
Okay, so if the internal problems were like this slow-burning fire, the public controversy around Drake Bell seems like the gasoline that got thrown on it. Yeah. This really ignited fierce criticism and brought the hypocrisy allegations to a head.
It absolutely did, because critics immediately drew a direct line back to AN's previous, very public, very rigid stance against another figure, Christy Carlson Romano.
What was that situation?
AN had strongly condemned Romano for platforming Corey Feldman. Her argument then was crystal clear. Even if someone like Feldman was a victim of Hollywood itself, they could also be, in AN's, the perpetrator of a crime against other minors, and therefore they should not be given a platform. It was a clear, principled stand on not enabling alleged convicted abusers, regardless of their...
Okay, a seemingly clear ethical line. But then Drake Bell enters the picture. He pleaded guilty to to crimes involving children. How did AN's previously clear line allegedly change?
Dramatically and very. Initially, right after Drake Bell's victims shared her testimony publicly, AN it seemed consistent with her Feldman.
Okay.
But then, very swiftly, she deleted that condemnation or explanation. She claimed she'd received new documents that somehow changed perspective on the way. This sudden U-turn with a vague reference to secret documents immediately raised red flag suspicion in the survivor.
And her involvement or lack of condemnation didn't stop there.
No, it escalated. She was later seen actively promoting Drake Bell in relation to a documentary. Even more visibly, she was photographed backstage at one of his concerts.
Wow. So going from condemning him to promoting him and attending his show.
Exactly. And critics pounced. They argued this was blatant selective application of principles, hard line against Feldman, but sudden nuance and even support for Bell, who had actually pleaded guilty. The accusation was that her stance shifted based on what served Alexa, maybe access, maybe content, maybe alliances, rather than consistent survivor act. Consistency was sacrificed, they claimed, for personal benefit.
What was the reaction from her own community, the people who followed her because of her advocacy work?
The backlash, according to sources, was huge, immense. People felt betrayed. When they pressed her, demanding an explanation for deleting the video, for changing her stance so drastically on someone convicted of harming a child, her response became infamous.
What did she say?
She essentially stated that she didn't owe survivors an explanation for her actions regarding Drake Bell.
Didn't owe survivors an explanation?
That was the reported response. And for people in a movement built entirely on trust, transparency, and shared experience, that answer was just unacceptable. It felt like a complete dismissal of the community she claimed.
How did she try to justify pulling back from the Drake Bell discussion later on?
Her public reasoning shifted to claiming she stopped talking about him because she was facing harassment and being bullied.
And how did her opponents frame that?
They framed it as her being unable to handle a little bit of justified back. They argued she was using her own survivor status to deflect legitimate criticism about what appeared to be her enabling usage act. The core critique was that she couldn't take the heat when her own ethical question. And this whole period, this controversy, also brought the issue of monetizing trauma back through merchandise.
Right, the merch. What specific items caused the most controversy?
She faced significant heat for selling Eat Predators branded merchandise, sure, but specifically for creating and selling Cycadonium.
Cycadonium. Clearly referencing the Quiet on Set Nickelodeon documentary.
Exactly. A documentary that exposed horrific, widespread abuse. Critics were appalled. They saw it as her directly trying to profit financially from the immense trauma revealed in that documentary, trauma experienced by countless victims, including herself. It felt like turning collective pain into a product.
What was her defense for selling this specific, highly sensitive merch?
Her defense was framed around necessity. She claimed she'd lost her acting career because she spoke out, and selling merch was how she could afford to, quote, eat. She positioned the t-shirts as a form of protest, like wearing a protest sign on their fucking t-shirt.
So protest and survival.
That was the justification. But opponents pushed back hard, questioning whether personal financial need, however real, justified commercially leveraging the traumatic narratives of an entire community she purported to represent. They demanded more accountability, more transparency, and questioned the ethics of that specific product. #tag out. So when you step back and try to synthesize this incredibly dense stack of sources, what really emerges is this complex, almost kind of Shakespearean collision, you know.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have this very public, very demanding legal battle AN is waging against Cat Tenbarge. It's framed as this fight against malicious lies, destroying her reputation, complicated further by that looming technical jurisdiction deadline. It's high drama.
Right, that's the external fight. But running right alongside it, sometimes underneath it, is this other narrative, this internal implosion.
Exactly. It's like a parallel crisis within the Eat Predators movement itself. The sources just pile up these accounts of alleged failure. The mismanagement of the Spot Me Fund, that shocking reported lack of empathy during the medical emergency, the claims of emotional coercion and fear, and then that huge, damaging public pivot on Drake Bell.
The irony, when you lay it all out, pretty potent, isn't it?
Well, it's inescapable. The lawsuit is fundamentally about external forces allegedly destroying a reputation through misinformation. Yet these internal sources provide this mountain of details suggesting that maybe, just maybe, that reputation was already deeply compromised. That trust had severely eroded, not because of Cat Tenbarge or Adam McIntyre primarily, but because of these alleged internal failures, the perceived hypocrisy, long before the defamation suit was even filed.
Which leaves us, and leaves you listening, with a really difficult, provocative thought to chew on. In this digital age where everything feels documented, amplified instantly, every mistake, every broken promise, every shift in alliance, how does a person or a movement actually recover credibility once that public narrative shifts?
Especially when it shifts so dramatically.
Right. Especially when you go from being seen as a trusted victim advocate to being accused by people within your own community of acting like a social predator yourself.
Yeah.
It forces some really tough questions, doesn't it? About the ethics, the sustainability, maybe even the inherent dangers of trauma-based activism when leadership fails and accountability disappears.